This is the latest iPad Pro that Apple has delivered. This is the M1 iPad Pro um, with the same M1 processor that you will find inside your latest generation iMacs, Mac Minis, MacBooks, and so forth. This one has 2 terabytes of space compared to my MacBooks, 1 terabyte of space. So everything that you will everything that you will find in this MacBook right here, which is the latest and greatest from Apple, is exactly the same internals that you will find inside this iPad. You know, when you talk about specifications, one for one, they are almost literally the same. Same RAM configuration. Both of them have 16 gigs of RAM. Both of them are rocking both the latest M1 processors. And my iPad is a little bit more when it comes to resource because I have 2 terabytes of storage compared to my MacBook that has 1 terabyte of storage. So with all that said, you might be asking yourself, well, what's the problem? Well, today was WWDC, and that's the Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference, where Apple comes out and they kind of talk about the latest and greatest and their operating systems and things that's coming to Apple from a developer standpoint, things that a lot of us developers get geeked up for. And they talk about it to kind of, put it out there to the world so that developers can kind of get some, first insights into what's going on at Apple, even start to develop applications for the new OS and things like that. But with that said, though, WWDC, frankly, WWDC 2021 sucked. A lot of things that was anticipated to be coming, especially to the new iPads with all that power, nothing. Apps, it was crickets from Apple. So I just kind of want to run through this video real quick to talk about why WWDC 2021 frankly sucked. This is not going to be a Apple bashing video. I still love Apple. I still use their products. It's just that I'm disappointed with the developer conference today, and in particular the keynote that Tim Cook and his team kind of brought to us today. So what's up, everyone? It's your boy Say Knows Tech, and today we're going to talk about all that, why WWDC 2021 sucked. But before we get into any of that, you know what time it is. Cue my intro. So like I said, you have the latest and greatest, the MacBook. This is the MacBook Air. Like I said, I updated it a little bit. I put the 16 gigs of RAM in it, put 1 terabyte of storage on it. And with the new M1 chip, it kind of brings all the lines of the Apple computers together. Before, you had the i5 and the i7 and all that kind of stuff. Those days are gone, where now you just have whatever the M series is, right? Currently it's the M1 that runs all the Apple products. And when I say this chip is capable, this thing kicks butt. Hands down. This is killing the Intel chipset currently with what it can do more from a productivity standpoint, from a processing standpoint, from a thermal standpoint, from a battery life standpoint. This thing is eating Intel's lunch right now, and people who pick this machine up are absolutely loving it. So with that said, you can only imagine the excitement when Apple turns around and say, hey, that same exact chip that we put into your new MacBook, your iMac, your Mac Mini, is coming to the iPad. And so people flipped out, especially people like me who was like, oh my God, Apple's listening. They're listening to their creative. They're listening to the people who use their computers, where we want a more portable, capable device that has all the power of, say, your MacBooks and things like that. And it appeared that Apple was kind of going this route with their new iPad Pro series. Now, you still had the iPads and the iPad Airs, which were capable devices. for if you wanted a tablet, but it really appeared that Apple was saying if you want a really pro device, here's a Pro Series tablet that can do more pro-like things. So a lot of us was kind of geeked up for WWDC, and today was that day where Apple, came out with WWDC, and in a nutshell, crickets, absolute crickets when it came to the actual what they was going to do for not just iPad OS but iOS and Mac OS. It was nothing there and this is subjective, of course. This is my point of view, but as a developer, I'm a developer who spends 90% of the day behind a computer developing, writing code and things like that, and doing things like system design, coding, talking in meetings, things of that nature. So I really want a device where it could be my, not necessarily all in one device, but I really didn't want to be carrying two devices. I wanted either if I can take my MacBook, I have to take my MacBook. If I had to take my iPad, I want to take my iPad. But I didn't really want to carry two devices to do all this stuff. And it appeared that Apple was going that route, saying, here's your iPad. You can do a lot of that stuff in your iPad. And it was nothing. It was nothing. Nothing came out today from WWDC that just couldn't be, honestly, a 14.x update. There was nothing defining about, the new Mac OS, the new iOS 15, new iPad OS 15. Nothing. All this could have been in the latest version of the current iOS and iPad OS, just as a update, a standard update. Like for iOS, they had things. They did some refine. It was a lot of refinements, but they weren't even revolutionary refinement. It was just some things that's we refine this a bit more for you, such as AI with the photos and images and maps. They did things with the maps and privacy. They did some enhancement with the privacy. But this is all the things that's been going on anyway. This is not nothing that's been, oh my God, they did all that right now. This has been things that's been happening for the past year or two anyway. With every update, they kind of throw these little features in to kind of keep, refining the iPad OS, iOS info. And the latest Mac OS, which is called Monterey, something like that. Again, it was nothing that was just like, oh my God, that's awesome. That's truly worthy of a upgrade. It was just small refinements that could have been part of the current, OS setup and so forth. So I'm disappointed. I feel crazy because this device here is not a cheap device. This device is priced higher than the current iMacs and MacBooks and so forth. Literally, this right here, like I said, got 2 terabytes of space. So you got the 16 gigs and all that kind of stuff. But by the time you throw in, the Apple Pencil, the Magic Keyboard, and all that kind of stuff, you're really bumping up against that $2,800, almost $3,000 price tag. And if you go with the 12.9 series, then this has the cellular capability. If you go up and you really spec out this iPad, an 11 and a 12.9 inch, you're right up against that $3,000, over that $3,000 price point. And whereas my MacBook, this is my computer, my laptop. When I updated this, I put one terabyte, not 2 terabytes. You're right about $1,900, something like that. So when you think about that, the price differences, when you look at the iPad now surpassing the price of the MacBook, it kind of put in a place where you're like, okay, Apple's trying to step up the Pro line series of the iPad. It's got to be something coming in WWDC that warrants that price. Plus, Apple has never, ever in the history of Apple, kind of, displayed the RAM specifications of the iPad. they came out and said this time, like, hey, with the iPad, if you go with the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte versions of the iPad, whether it be the 11-inch or the 12.9-inch, you're getting 16 gigs of RAM. They made that known. And they put 2 terabytes in these devices. And so a lot of people felt like, oh wow, something's got to be coming on the horizon. WWDC is going to be epic. They're going to finally turn the iPad into a more productivity device. Because right now, iPad OS is nice, but let's just be serious with it. It is still is holding the iPad back. And in all, for all intent purposes, it's just a kind of enhanced version of iOS for your phone. Okay, we bought that, we bought into it and so forth. And just for like a disclaimer, I'm not asking Apple, and I don't think a lot of people are asking Apple to merge macOS and our iPad OS and make it this new OS. We're not asking for a new operating system. We're not asking Apple to merge the two. I think a lot of people would have been happy if we spent all this money for these new iPads, and we just now have a more capable device. Just having an OS that matched the sheer beast specifications of this device. So you got this, it's almost like having this tiger that's just like, that's this brute tiger that has all this ability to do all this stuff, and you're holding it with a leash and won't let it just do what it does best. And that's kind of what Apple is doing to the iPads right now. And do I blame Apple for it? No, it was my fault. This was my fault. I take 100% blame for this. I bought into the hype. I bought into the marketing, and I got bitten. I spent a lot of money for this device. I still like it. It's still an iPad. I still use it every day. It still serves the purpose that I was using it for. But I would love to be able to do like Final Cut Pro on the iPad, because it's no reason why I can't. I would love to be able to run native M1 applications such as Visual Studio Code, the M1 version, on my iPad, but I can't. I would love to be able to use full Xcode on my iPad, but I can't. And Apple tried to appease some of the developers by saying, oh, here is Swift Playgrounds, which is an app that allows you to, learn the code in Swift, and say, oh, now you can actually build and, code and build apps for the iPhone and iPad now on your iPad with Swift Playgrounds. But it's not the same, because you got to utilize, I believe, the Swift UI to kind of build the applications. It's not nearly the functionality and just the abilities that Xcode has. It's not Xcode. It's a dumbed down version, a more contained version of Xcode. Like I said, it was a learning tool for people who was learning Swift, and now they're just adding this ability to Swift Playgrounds to allow developers to develop and things like that. But there's going to be a lot of limitations there. If you think for a second that you're not going to have limitations that you don't have with Xcode, you're going to be ticked off once you see the full implementation of this. So I'm not buying the whole Swift Playgrounds thing. Either give me Xcode or don't give me nothing. So a lot of people ask, so Seti, what were you expecting Apple to do? Once again, I was just expecting Apple to kind of unleash that power of the iPad to its audience. For me personally, I would like to have seen a better file management system. I would like to have seen better multitasking. Yes, and in the new iPad OS, they did address multitasking, but it's not, they didn't address it. All they did was put a button to help with where do you want to line up your apps at for multitasking. It would have been nice to be able to have windowed apps, for instance, that maybe even if it wasn't necessarily resizable, but I would have like them be resizable, just like you do on your MacBook. So for instance, you open up an app, it comes up in a window, you can make it full size if you want it. You can kind of resize the windows and things like that, especially for those of us who have the 12.9 version of the iPad. That would have been awesome. I would like to have seen native M1 applications run on the iPad. I'm not even asking about Rosetta. I'm not even saying, hey, throw Rosetta on there. Even though Rosetta could easily run on this thing because you gotta remember the same chipset, everything that's inside the MacBook is now inside the iPad, line for line. So there's no reason to not do that. I would love to be able to run like, the M1 versions of like Photoshop or some of the Adobe tools, or the M1 version of like Visual Studio Code, for instance, and be able to run, maybe even if I had to use the remote extensions to kind of remote and SSH into my repos and projects, the code, at least I didn't have to use Jump Desktop to get to my projects and stuff. Even though that's how I do it today, and it works great. But I don't know. And it's like Apple doesn't want to give us what we really asked for. Me personally, I would love a device that I can do both sides of the house with. If it's going to be the MacBook, for instance, I carry a MacBook. If it was going to be the MacBook, I would like a MacBook that I can run my iPad apps on and have cellular connectivity to. Is that too much to ask for? Yes, Apple gave us the ability to run iPad apps on the Mac, under Mac OS, but they're not really pushing that. That was a gimmick to say yes, we did it, but the developer's not supporting it. And I don't buy that either, because Apple has no problem with forcing their developers to do certain things when they want them to. So why not say, you know what, if you have an iPad app out there, you need to support, it needs to be able to run also on, the Mac OS, if it's already there. Like, for instance, there's zero reason why I can't run my Netflix app on my MacBook, especially since the feature's there. It's just that Netflix is not letting it happen. Why? But yet they have no problem forcing Netflix to abide by certain store policies and publishing policies and things like that nature. Things like Udemy. Why can't I run my Udemy app on my MacBook? Like, I was in Vegas this past week and flying, and I couldn't take my MacBook because I needed offline content. But you can't really get that offline content on your MacBook because the apps don't support it, and the apps are not just there. They're only on the iPad and so forth. So I had to take my iPad instead, which wasn't really it worked out fine. But then I lose other abilities, such as to be able to just start coding in an environment. I got to kind of require my network so I can remote desktop into my other environments to code and things like that. So it's like you have this beast on one hand, you have this beast on the other hand. They kind of tease you a little bit. Apple, like, here, look what we just released, but now not give you the full power to kind of utilize them in very similar ways. It's almost like you're forced to have both devices if you want to work in that very mobile world. And these devices aren't, a couple $100. These devices are expensive. Got my MacBook. Once you spec it out some, you're talking about almost $2,000. You got the iPad that's bumping up against that, $3,000 line, and then above $3,000 if you got the larger ones, larger screen, the 12.9 Sprint. It's frustrating. It's frustrating, and it's frustrating to know what this iPad in particular has and what this MacBook has, and see Apple purposely kind of keeping it from being what it can possibly be. So I heard the other comment is, why don't you just go Windows? I can't. I'm a developer, and yes, you can develop on Windows. I do it all the time for work because, my job is a Windows shop. But a lot of stuff I do in my personal time, I am a Linux, and I'm a Linux developer. I use a terminal a lot, things like that. Yes, it's gotten better in Windows, but honestly, and this is subjective to me, coding and developing in Windows still suck to me. It sucks. Yes, WSL has gone a long way to get it there, but between just Windows itself and the crap that I got to deal with Windows, and then the true lack of support that from a developer standpoint that I run into from time to time, it's easier for me to just go to my MacBook, run terminal, or go up into my Linux environments and just, you know, do what I gotta do. It's more straightforward. It's more in line with my workflow. So I'm not saying that Windows sucks for development, but it sucks for me for development. So I'm not gonna go that route. Linux, I do code in Linux a lot, but when I code in Linux, you know, I'm usually doing it in a VM on my MacBook or something like that. Because if I go straight Linux, I end up losing a lot of my apps that I use every day because they're not Linux compatible. So you got that part. You know, that, like that, for instance, that would have been awesome to be able to say, I got 2 terabytes, 2 terabytes of storage on my iPad. It would have been awesome if I was able to allocate a certain amount of storage to be like a, I don't know, kind of wall guard that off, or maybe silo that storage and allow me to do standard things inside that storage, such as, you know, maybe install different programming frameworks so I can run my CLIs and things out of that area that's not affecting the iOS area or the iPad OS area. Little things like that would have took this device a long ways, because I love this device. I use it for my note taking, a lot of my media consumption. It's lightweight. It's easy for me to go with. It's got cellular connectivity, so I can I'm hooked onto the Verizon network, 5G. I can do all these things on this, but then I can't do it on this because, at least not natively. For me, I do use it for coding and so forth, but I use this program called Jump Desktop to do that. And while Jump Desktop is a awesome program, it would have been nice to be able to do that natively through the iPad. And I guess that's where my rant's coming from. It's just that there's a lot of missed opportunity here that Apple is just not. It feels purposeful. It feels like they're purposely not taking that step to make the iPad and the MacBook all that it can be. I would love the MacBook to have cellular capabilities. Why don't it? Why does the MacBook do not have cellular capabilities and the iPad does? It's the same. Once again, you gotta remember, it's the same damn internals. Same internals. Everything's the same. Bam, bam, same. Look in the mirror. You look at your reflection. Same internals. One can do what the other one can't. Why? And that's my issue with this right now. Is that, you know, and people are like, oh, why don't you get a Surface Pro or a Surface Lap? I don't like Surface like that. I have one, can't stand it. You know, it's once again, I'm not a Windows person. I'm not going into that Windows versus Mac thing. I'm not a Windows person. I'm not that. I use it for work. I use it because I have to. But I'm not a Windows person. I am a Linux and Mac developer. This is what I do. So I'm not going to switch operating systems just because of that. So, but that's my rant. I'm going to kind of keep it right there. Yeah, I'm frustrated. Bottom line, I'm frustrated. But it is what it is, you know. We'll just see how everything pans out and see. Maybe Apple will surprise us with something. Who knows? But with that said, that's my video, my WWDC video. It was not what I was expecting. It was a major letdown. The bottom line, I will say, if you're looking for an iPad, the iPads are awesome. It's not that I'm bashing the iPad, bashing Apple. iPads are awesome, but I would say that 99% of the population out there, including myself at this point, if you need an iPad, I would probably say your best bang for buck is going to be the iPad Air. Because it has a lot of more advanced technologies and so forth. Like, you know, all that kind of stuff that you might be looking for is way cheaper. You can still use the Magic Keyboard. You can still use the pencils and all that kind of stuff. I think that's the best bang for buck. Unless you absolutely need, and you can justify it, why you want the iPad Pros, especially like that 12.9. Don't get caught up in the hype like I did. Don't get caught up in, oh, it's got XDR. It has XDR, but you can't use it. because there's absolutely nothing that's really out there to use it with. So that's what I'm saying. Probably the best bang for buck is going to be the iPad Air. Go with the iPad Air. I think you'll be happy. If you're looking for an iPad, it's a great device, but don't go for the latest and greatest just because Apple's doing a good job promoting it. You'll be wasting a lot of money. Things that you know that the cheaper iPads can do, they will do it exactly the same as these later versions. Exactly the same. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You spend a lot more. You spend thousands of dollars more for something that a less than $1,000 iPad can do just the same, just as fast, just as capable. So if you look for an iPad, go with the iPad Air. That's probably your best bang for buck. But I hope that you liked or laughed at this crazy video of me ranting about how sucky WWDC 21 was. Hey, if you watched it all through the end, hey, by all means, give this video a like. Subscribe to the channel as always. I would appreciate that. It helps my YouTube algorithm, to promote the channel and so forth. Like I said, this is a fairly new channel, so please subscribe. But as always, stay geeky, stay techie. SETI out.